Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Forgive Yourself podcast. I am your host, Brenda Reese, and today we are entering into a very tender, courageous, and deeply important conversation. My guest today is Heather Conn, author of the memoir, No Letter in Your Pocket. She's also the author of 2 picture books and 2 history books. She likes to write. She's an award-winning freelance writer whose work has appeared in more than 50 publications, including Sierra Magazine, Canadian Geographic, The Globe, and Mail, and The Sun. She has taught memoir writing, journalism, creative nonfiction, and screenwriting at places such as the University of King's College and Selkirk College. She's also served as communications manager for the Ending Violence Association of BC and as a facilitator for mentors in the violence prevention. Heather is also a freelance editor. She's a writing coach, and she's a trained facilitator in soul collage, a creative and intuitive process that can help people access deep layers of healing and self-understanding. And as you're going to hear a little bit later, this was a big part of her own healing process, and it's something I want to learn more about. And today, Heather is also here as someone who has walked through a very personal healing journey. Her memoir shares her experience of surviving incest by her father, the impact of trauma and sexual assault on her life, and the path she found toward healing, creativity, compassion, and forgiveness. Now, because of the sensitive nature of today's conversation, I want to gently say to you, our listener, please take care of yourself as you listen. If this topic touches something tender in you, pause when you need to. Breathe and come back only if and when it feels supportive. Heather, welcome to the podcast. I'm really honored that you're here.
Well, thanks. I'm delighted to be here.
Yes, I am. I wish we would have recorded our pre-conversation. That always happens because of all the things that we talked about. And what I really would like to know more about, because we'll talk about this a little bit later, but you have your memoir, and then you've also done it as an audiobook more recently. And this book that you wrote, No Letter in Your Pocket, this has caused a little controversy in your life, you shared with me. And what I would like to talk about, I kind of want to go to those places that we talked about where people have not been in total agreement. You've lost some relationships over this. But what led you to write the book?
Well, it was a big part of my healing process. I mean, as a writer, I was reluctant to write it. It wasn't easy to write, that's for sure. But then, because I'm very much into authenticity and openness and transparency, I thought, how can I not share the event that has had the biggest impact on my life? So, I mean, and I many times I put it away and really questioned whether it was healthy for me to be doing this. But what kept me going was I thought, even if one woman reading this book makes a different choice in her life, because I was suicidal at one point, and I thought, if this book help someone change or make something different in their lives, it will be worth it. And I wanted to show that you can go through horrible experiences, but if you go inward and do healing work, really core, deep healing work, and come out the other side, the rewards are just absolutely amazing. So that's
Mm,
really what I want to share.
that is, yeah, I feel that from you. And it hasn't been an easy journey, as we talked about. You wrote in the book about the story of going to India. Do you want to share a little bit about that? Because that kind of opened up some memories and some things for you that really, if I'm saying this right, really started you on that healing journey.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, this was back in 1990. I went solo traveling in, India for 7 months, basically as sort of my own form of, spiritual retreat. I was meditating on my own every day, and, it was a very powerful time. But what I didn't realize was, as a white woman traveling by myself, there was a lot of beliefs at the time in that culture about Western women being sort of easy. And I had men coming up to me and making very inappropriate comments to me. I was assaulted a number of times. And a lot of things like that happened while I was there, because you're not traveling with a man, you don't have a chaperone, all those things. But what that happened though, and also because I was doing a lot of physical work. I had done a trek in Nepal. I did a climb in India, got up to 20,000 feet. I was doing a lot of hiking in really steep, remote areas. So it was demanding a lot of my body. So I think it got me back in touch with a part of my body that I had just shut off. And I started to have these dreams and bringing back things that I knew I had always had, but had pushed them away. And it really I think the assaults and the treatment I had by some of the men there really got me back in touch at a core level with what had happened in my childhood.
When you were noticing all of these things, I mean, that's an amazing 7-month trip. 20,000 feet. Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
that's amazing and brave and courageous, right? To do those. And I love how you talked about that it brought you back into the body, because what I'm going to say is because of what you experienced with the incest, it does take us, like a lot of the sexual assault survivors will talk about, is like not feeling like they're in their body. And so what were some of those feelings that you had up until that time, like being out of body? Can you describe that? What kind of generally was your relationships like, or your life like?
Well, for one thing, I had a pattern of being with alcoholic men, which I didn't consciously choose, but my father was an alcoholic. And so I think on some level, subconsciously, I probably knew that I wouldn't have to reveal my whole self. I didn't have to be there completely to show up completely because I think I had compartmentalized and shut off parts of myself, so that would not I wouldn't have to be totally 100% vulnerable. I mean, I didn't consciously think that,
Right.
but looking back, that's what I think was the case.
Well, and they prove that now with science, that actually we do end up with the patterns from our parents because of the familiarity there. And we don't do it consciously until it becomes conscious. And so that's kind of rough. Did you kind of have this feeling of like, oh, this is just the way it is. This is who I am, or this is the relationships I'm going to have up until the point of your healing?
Um, well, I don't think it was as black and white as that. I mean, I remember at one point being very clear I do not want to be in an alcoholic relationship. And I had gone to Al Anon and other things like that. So, I mean, with all these things, it's just I feel like it's little bits here and there that it's like planting seeds and of awareness. And it's not like I just suddenly woke up one morning and everything was so clear and aha,
Right.
it didn't work like that. So.
Right. That's true. So, what was your relationship like with your father up until that India trip?
Well, uh, I mean, on the one hand, I felt he was a less rigid person than my mom, and he had a really good sense of humor. So we had actually spent a lot of good times together too. I mean, we were both into cars. He took me to Formula One races. He took us on outings, trips, and I appreciated his intelligence, his intellectual thing. So there were a lot of positive qualities about him, and that's what made it more difficult too, because I was trying to how do you integrate those things together? But I mean, he was always it was, I would say, distant to some degree, but on the other hand, he used to I don't know, I won't go into all the details, but it was as if he treated me, I felt like I was the youngest of 4 girls and that, I was like the baby of the family. I would go and sit on his lap at the dinner table, and he would say, "Oh, we're going into our act," and things like that. And there were things when I look back and I write about that were inappropriate, But as a child, you don't necessarily know because you don't have an adult context. I mean, the main thing that stuck with me throughout it all was the adult reactions to things when I told them something, because as a child I was aware that it didn't make sense to me, the reaction that the adult had to what I told them, but I didn't know why. And so those really stood with me the whole way through. An adult reaction and not understanding it. So
And nothing was said to you about it as a
no,
child.
well, I do mention the book. There was one time at age 5 when something happened on my bed with my father and I won't go into the details, that I actually had an out of body experience at that time, and then I told my mom, and initially she didn't believe me. She went and looked on the bed, and then she asked me, "Have you told anybody else about this?" And I said, "No." And I was only like 5, but what I remember is that it didn't make sense to me, her reaction. Like, just I couldn't understand why she was responding the way she did, so
Right. And how could you? Right. I mean, how could you really understand at 5? There's not, and we look to the adults and our parents as protecting us and not causing us more confusion, you know? So I totally get that. And I'm so sorry you had to go through that. Yes. And I'm so glad that you are sharing your story
oh,
today
thank you. Well, thank you
because
for giving me the opportunity to do that.
absolutely. Now, up until that, because from what I understand, the India trip was kind of like an opening for you.
Yes, absolutely.
And was that kind of like this moment where you could no longer avoid where you kind of had an idea of what happened, but not ready to face it? Is that a good way to put it?
Absolutely, and in the book, I actually mention how I ended up in relationships with 2 different men. One was an Indian man that right from the beginning, we had this incredible connection, and yet I recognized at the time that I wasn't ready yet for that
Mm.
level of openness and intimacy. And then I had a relationship with a British mountain climber who was an alcoholic, and that I went in with it with my eyes open. I totally knew, but it felt very familiar to me, and so I recognized that I was in between kind of the old and the new, like not ready yet for the new one, but not totally happy with with the old either. But anyway, and I do write about that in the book too.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. Because that also takes courage to enter relationships, right? But you entered into them, it sounds like, with a lot of awareness.
Well, and it's also was interesting in the one with the Indian man because his mother was a strict Hindu, and so she was horrified that he was with an older white woman and that we were traveling unchaperoned. And so by being with me, he had a whole different relationship of how he was treated in his own country too. I felt like I was kind of labeled the evil one just from culturally what was going on there. So that was a whole new experience for me too.
Oh, I
Uh,
bet. So what was your experience like after that trip? So you had like memories, awareness, the relationships. What happened when you came home?
Well, I came home I had to get knee surgery, and it was a time of recession. I couldn't find work, but I was really clear that I wanted to get to the bottom of this because I felt like almost like I wanted to do an exorcism. I mean, I didn't want to escape it. So one thing I chose to do is I borrowed money from a friend, and I had just done a little bit of yoga, not too much, and I went for a 1-week retreat, and it was so powerful, it was unbelievable. I mean, this particular teacher encouraged us to do breath work and vocal release, and
Mm.
so I had these sounds coming out of me that were just absolutely shocking. It was like they went beyond any conscious effort on my part. It was as if my body was just saying, "Hey, I have a form to speak now. I'm gonna speak." And these animal cries or whatever just came out It was unbelievable, very powerful, and yet I felt amazing afterwards. I think they terrified some of the people in the group, but our teacher talked about that. She said that she had had Vietnam War vets do things similar to that in a
Oh.
class. And we all talked about it afterwards, and it was a very, very, very powerful healing time for me.
Did you continue on
Mm.
with those kind of experiences
Oh,
after that?
yes, I did. Yeah.
Oh, wow. How did it continue to help you?
Well, because it kept me in touch with my body, and I had really, great body awareness. Oh, yeah, and I should mention too, before I went on that trip, I've always had an issue with anger, and I decided to do an anger workshop, and at that time, I still wasn't consciously accepting that I was an incest survivor. So one of the exercises they gave us, it was an all-woman group, they handed us this long coiled, roll of newspapers. It was about, I don't know, maybe 3 feet long, and they asked us to start hitting the floor with it. And at first, I was feeling a little embarrassed or whatever, and then I just started slamming the floor with this thing, and there was only one other woman and I that were doing this. Everybody else was sort of standing back looking horrified. But anyway, I kept wailing and smashing this thing until all the pieces of newspaper was shattering and spraying all over. And the I found out that the other woman was an incest survivor, and so I it's giving me shivers as I'm mentioning this, and I just realized then, wow, that's very interesting that we were the only 2 that did that in the whole group. But I again, like, I really believe in the wisdom your body holds even if your mind is not ready yet. So my body was already accessing all that my mind hadn't yet been ready to accept.
Well, and I think you gave it. I like the little nudges your body was giving you because I truly believe our body does talk to us.
Hmm.
And it's whether we listen or not. And you were listening. I mean, that's really amazing. You didn't shut it off. Even though you weren't quite ready to acknowledge the whole thing, you were giving. It's kind of like somebody explained, it's like little steam, like we let little pieces of
Uh,
steam out, so things don't totally explode.
yeah.
Because I don't doubt that you were angry,
Mhm.
right? From being so confused and everything you went through as a child. There's so many women that are angry with the different forms of abuse that they have suffered.
Well, also being in a family where it was like emotional expression did not exist at all. There was no room in our family for you to express any emotions at all. And just on that alone, I had so much anger about.
Oh, yeah. Well, we don't feel heard or understood or the ability, everything builds up, and our bodies hold so much. They're amazing.
Yeah, in fact, it's kind of sad, but when I was about 7 years old, I was convinced that I must be adopted. Like, I couldn't believe that I was actually a member of my family, and I really remember that very strongly. I kept asking my parents, "Was I adopted?" Because I just didn't feel like that was my family. I mean, it's very
Oh.
sad to say, but that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, there's a lot of clients that I talk to that had that same feeling with the different things that they'd experienced, but they just didn't feel like they fit into that family. Was there anything that stood out for you that had you feel that way? Was it because of the emotional expression?
Yeah, mostly the lie. I was a very creative child, and I always had really incredible dreams, and I'd want to talk to my mom about them in the morning. She had no interest in that whatsoever. Like, she came from a very strict Calvinist um family, growing up on a farm in the depression. So I understand it. I mean, her upbringing was more oriented to daily survival and just, nose to the grindstone and all that stuff. She actually announced to me very proudly, we don't emote, like that was and also in my family, we were raised as if you had any medical ailment at all, it was like you had a character flaw. So basically, it was like you're just supposed to get up in the morning and, oh, yeah, and if you slept in, she made you feel like the whole society, civilization would crumble. You were a sloth. So I had the Protestant work ethic drilled into me, which on one hand was really great, but on the other hand, it was destructive. I had to unlearn that too. So,
Before we talk about the forgiveness piece, because I really want us to talk about that for both your parents, but the creativity part is fascinating to me, about the things that you were allowing yourself to do and about the soul collage. What happened? Like, you did the yoga and you did the anger. When did you start doing the writing and the soul collage? How did your trajectory go as far as your healing was concerned?
well, I mean, I had been doing collage and writing ever since I was a child. Like for me, creativity has always been like breathing. I've done drawing, everything, all kinds of stuffs. But I it was in about, I would say around 2005, something like that. I got introduced. I found a book about soul collage, and it was a process started by Sina Frost in the U.S. and it really spoke to me on so many levels because I also did photography and do photography, and it was based on Jungian concepts and Jungian archetypes. And the idea is that you create these 5 by 8 cards, and each one represents different aspects of yourself. And one of the things I really like about it is that it doesn't make any judgments regarding what we would normally call our negative side or our shadow self. In fact, it embraces the shadow self as equally as our so called positive traits. So, in some ways, I felt like that gave me permission to create these cards that I actually at one time showed some to my late husband. He actually took soul collage with me, which was great. But he found like I did cards about the parts when I was depressed and suicidal. He actually found them quite frightening. I think he didn't really want to see them, but for me, it felt like an incredible release to have this image in front of me because I feel like every time you do that you're releasing some part of that out. It's because those parts of us want to be recognized too. And so you can do writing exercises around them. So I did that. And yeah, I mean my writing all the way through. I'm a huge believer in the therapeutic power of writing. And I've taught courses around that. And I really encourage people to go as deeply as they can.
Yeah. So you were writing, and was it like journal type of writing or stories, or what kind of writing helped you?
Well, I did. I'm very much into the wild mind process that Natalie Goldberg writes about, where it's
Oh,
timed writing, where you just do, and say, give yourself 10 minutes and allow whatever wants to come out. And that can be very powerful too. And writing with your non dominant hand,
I've
both of
heard of that.
those are all about ways to access your subconscious. And so I did a lot of that. I wrote hate letters to my father, not to send, but just to vent everything for my own sake. And I did start writing stories, but it was more just doing that spontaneous, people call it stream of consciousness, timed writings.
Yeah.
That really helped me a lot.
So it's a certain time limit, like 10 minutes or something?
Yeah, well, you choose. So some people start with 5. I taught courses around that too for a long time, and it was really exciting to see people who had a lot of resistance initially, and then because it's about surrender. And once you're willing to surrender and let whatever wants to come out, it's very powerful.
Oh, now if somebody wants to do that, would you suggest they can do that on their own or with
Oh,
some guidance?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, you could get her book Wild Mind and Writing Down the Bones, and then she has some exercises in there that you can do.
Oh, great. Now, were you doing formal therapy too at the time that you were doing all of this?
Well, I did a lot of different forms of therapy, and I did inner child therapy for about a year, which was huge for me. It was really, really powerful because it was for the first time my wounded inner child was really getting a voice, and that incorporated doing sand tray work, doing drawings. I tried all different kinds of things, but it was very effective. I did straight, talk therapy. I did EMDR. I did a lot of different things.
Dan, did you find those were helpful too in accessing the parts of you that needed access, or did one help over the other?
Um, well, yeah, I don't know whether it was sort of an accumulative effect of everything. I mean, I do think that talk therapy does have its limits, and it also depends on who the person is doing it. I did have a very effective talk therapist who I dedicate my book to her and to my late husband. She was amazing. And ironically, I wanted to go back and work with her, and then she died, and so I couldn't work with her again, and, so that was hard. So then I was looking at other places I could go, and I did go to briefly to a 12-step group for incest survivors, but I found it so hard to hearing the other women's stories and what they'd been through. It was just so heart-wrenching that I actually felt that it was actually possibly gonna have a negative impact on me. Plus, I had to travel quite a long distance by ferry and everything to get there, so I didn't do it for a long period.
So you've done quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, which you talk about in your book,
Mhm.
which I really value. And so this is a journey for you. So this isn't just a year or 2 years. This is a long period of time.
Mhm.
How I'd kind of like to ease into this beautiful sensitive area of forgiveness. And, for some people, it's complicated, right? It sounds
Mhm.
like it's excusing what happened. For others, it can be freedom, like we talked about.
Yeah.
And for some, it doesn't feel possible. And so, what can you share with us how you found the way to forgive your father?
Well, again, it was a long process because 'cause I'm not a naturally forgiving person, but I recognize that holding all this anger and resentment at him was not healing me. It was not helpful to me. And I think that's one important thing to say, that forgiveness has nothing to do with the perpetrator. It's about how we choose to respond to what happened to us. So a lot of it came out of my spiritual beliefs. I'm in a Buddhist sangha based on the teachings of the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, and he very much. And even when I was in India, I was very drawn to the Buddhism, the Tibetan Buddhism there. I spent a lot of time in Tibetan Buddhist communities because I felt that they were very accepting of me. I didn't get the same kind of treatment that I did when I was in like the big Indian city. So I really respected that acceptance. And so anyway, that the whole concept of the compassion and the concept of oneness and interbeing, that we are all interconnected. So if you're getting angry at somebody else, you're really getting angry at yourself. And it's a whole different way of looking at it. If you see us all as connected, I really wanted to try to understand what had made my dad do what he did. Because it's, to me, it's the easy thing to just go, oh, he's an evil monster. He's horrible. He's not like me. And yet we're all on a continuum of good and evil. I don't even like using those terms, but so it was really coming out of my spirituality. I want to walk the talk. So how could I be learning all about compassion and oneness and then not reflecting it in my deepest relationship.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So
that was basically the foundation of it, was my spiritual beliefs.
so when did that come into your process? So you're doing therapy and creativity. When did that come into your process?
Well, it was pretty early on, but as I mentioned to you before, it was initially more from an abstract intellectual level. Like I just kind of my mind decided, okay, I forgive my father, as if, okay, that's check that off the list. But then I was watching a movie, The Stranger, with Orson Welles. It's a film noir, and in it, he plays this very respected academic who comes to a New England town with a new bride. Everybody looks up to him. And then Edward G. Robinson comes and says he's trying to find the truth about Orson Welles' past, that he was actually a Nazi and had murdered people. And so I was really surprised as I was watching this film. I found myself getting more and more angry as I'm watching it. And I couldn't understand why. And then I realized I thought it was because my father was able to just go along his merry way and without any awareness of the repercussions of his impact of his actions or whatever. So I actually confronted him and we had a talk about it, and I let him know, like, and I felt like this is the bearing witness stage, which I feel is really important. And I have a whole chapter on that in my book, The Act of Bearing Witness. So that was really important to me, and actually, my late husband helped me with that. He was the one who said, "You know, you've skipped the bearing witness stage." Like, my late husband was a huge support. It made a big, big difference for me. So, anyway, then I realized that I wanted to own forgiveness really in my body and coming from I had to connect my head and heart. I think at that point, they were still even though I was pretty open, I think there was still some separation there. So I really needed to open up my heart and come at it from a bodily, heart level.
How did you do that?
I kept like I read a lot of inspirational contemplative stuff, and meditation has been a huge, huge part of my healing too. I meditated a lot when I was in India. I had lucid dreams. Dreams have been a big part of my healing too. I've kept dream journals for years. I've been in dream groups. Then the yoga, continuing to do yoga, opening my body, and it's just like a whole combination. I've never been somebody that just takes one route to something. I took a lot of different things, so I think it was a combination. Like I said, the inner child work was really instrumental to me. That made a huge difference.
Giving the voice to that part of you, right?
Yeah. And actually one of the inner child therapist I had who later became a friend, I was quite shocked when she said to me at one point, you know, you and your dad had a lot more to your relationship than just incest, you know, and he at this time he was in his 80s and or late 70s, and she was saying, you know, he's not going to be around for much longer. Are you going to just focus on that aspect of your relationship? And I was kind of horrified because I was still in that, you know, the duality thing, this or that. And she was basically inviting me to look at both and, which is now how I perceive things. But that's not
Yeah.
socially and culturally how we're conditioned to look at stuff. So that really opened a door for me too. I thought, wow, if my therapist is saying that, and you know, a concept that I initially was thinking was horrifying. That I think helped open the door. It was all planting seeds that to go and talk to my dad, and even regardless of what his response is, which I won't say, you'll have to read the book, but just the fact that I did that was already just then told him the impact it had on me and how it affected me. That was really made it. That was a huge change for me.
Oh my gosh, that's so courageous of you. I mean, and so it's not even the right word, right? I mean, it's almost like I have to do it, right?
Yeah,
You know, it's not even no one thinks about bravery or courage. It's just like this is for survival, really,
yeah,
about healing. And had you
yeah.
not had any conversations about it before that, was this the conversation that you had?
Yeah, no, in fact, he sent me yeah, we hadn't talked about it at all before, and that was really bothered me too, that we're just rolling along as if nothing happened. Like a theme that has always intrigued me in movies and media and everything is and the whole like the Wizard of Oz thing, look behind the curtain, like who's really there, like the contrast between what we see as images and then what's really going on behind closed doors, that in all different ways. Like that's I'm like the feel like I've been the kid who like puts their finger in the hold the water in the dike and then wants to take it out to show people, look, this is what's really going on. I feel very strongly about that. That's a theme in my life that, and I was a journalist too, and that's a lot of what you're trying to do as a journalist is to reveal stories about what's really going on that otherwise people don't hear about.
Wow. And having this conversation was the part that really helped you with the healing too.
Yeah, definitely, because it was I felt the bearing witness stage, and I had the support of my husband and late husband at that time, which really helped me too.
Yeah. And it sounds like your friend, the therapist, also.
Oh, yeah,
So you had
absolutely.
support in doing something like that, which I think is
Yeah,
good. And
yeah.
when you went through the forgiveness process, did you separate like forgiving your father from excusing what he did, right? Is could because forgiveness isn't about excusing or minimizing what happened. It's not about
Exactly.
that at all.
Yeah,
This is about you being free. And
exactly.
did you did you have to separate forgiving your father from the act? Was there any kind of thought about that or
No, not really. It
okay.
just I tried to understand. Like, in fact, I heard somebody say, and it might even have been my therapist, try to imagine everyone as like a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old with unmet needs. So, I mean, that's how I saw my father. I actually end up feeling sorry for him. And so that was one way that I just looked at him from a different perspective, like what wounded him in a way that made him make the choices he did. And he was a doctor who every day was dealing with children who were close to death. So I think the way he chose to shut himself off was through alcohol, like rather than face the pain of seeing these children dying and wounded and everything. And I even wondered whether he might have been abused, I don't know, so
Yeah. That's some of those unknowns that we don't know. They say hurt people, but we sometimes we don't ever know. But I think what I find really valuable about your journey is that you took care of yourself. You did your healing. You came to your because giving forgiveness without looking at our own stuff first, it's hard. You can't really get to forgiveness that way. Everything that you did built up to that point, and even then it was hard.
well, and it was hard taking a stance that's not a popular one. Like I totally support the Me Too movement and everything, but I feel like by instantly labeling an abuser this monster and ogre or whatever, you never get beyond, well, what was in them that caused that to happen? And having compassion, it doesn't mean you condone it. Like had people, I lost a friendship over this because she felt that I was condoning what my dad did, that I didn't, give him enough I didn't criticize him enough, but I thought I tried in the book to show as much as possible, and I recognized that I was unwilling to go through a court system because I knew, the rates of success of that are so low, and you have to have so much support around you. And I just knew that, like, even just writing this book was so hard. I just knew I wouldn't have been able to do that. So I actually made the conscious choice that I wasn't going to write this book till after my dad died. I wasn't going to have it published till after he died because I just didn't want it. Because even members of my immediate family haven't talked to me about it. I found out several just recently that a brother-in-law didn't believe didn't believe what I wrote in the book. So, it's hard to come out with a book like this because you can't celebrate it in the same way that other people's books are because people, if they haven't healed themselves and their own wounds, often you're not going to be able open to hear the story of someone else's either. So but I just trust that it finds who is meant to read it. So, like, for instance, I just had a woman find me. She's a psychiatrist in Texas, and she works with women who've been humanly trafficked. And she found me online. I end up editing her book, and the main character in the book was an incest survivor. And she hadn't even heard about my book. She didn't know about it, but we just felt like we were meant to connect. And she wrote me a wonderful testimonial, and it was just a great connection. So I just have faith in that. And Bernie Siegel, Dr. Bernie Siegel, who wrote the afterward, I had never met him before, but I really appreciate what he wrote. And so I just contacted him and he said, "Why are you writing this book?" And I guess he liked the answer I gave. And so and I was surprised in his whole career. Like, I think he's in his early 90s now. He had
Yeah.
ever written a, a forward or afterward to a book. This was the first time. So,
Yeah, I
okay.
saw that. I'm reading your book now. I saw that. And it's an amazing journey.
Oh,
And I'm really glad that you are talking about this forgiveness piece and that how what you lost over your belief about forgiveness, the conscious decision you made to look at your father differently than what we're trained. I mean, we talked quite a bit about that before we hit, before recording, and it's really important because like we all have, I like to go back the shadow, right? We all have the possibility of doing these things. And, who knows why? Some do it and some don't, but we all have a shadow. We all have
yeah.
capabilities and we all are connected somehow. And so by having that compassion piece, like I say, though, I want to preface that with doing our own work. We don't jump to forgiveness. We can't. It's not right. Because, like you said, it keeps it all intellectual and it doesn't bring it into the body. Your body needed healing, and that's what you gave it.
Well, yeah, and I want to mention after I had changed this perspective of forgiveness and I really felt like I had embodied it, I did end up seeing that movie again. I wasn't planning to, The Stranger. I just saw that it was on, so I thought, okay, and I turned it on. I just watched it for a while and I found it really interesting that I had no emotional response to it at all. Like, it was a completely different thing. So that really felt like validation. Because sometimes it's hard. That's the one thing with inner growth work. It's not, we're so conditioned to judge and rate everything by external things like having a little checklist or whatever, but so much of this is, well, it's invisible work and it's a lot of times it's not concrete, and so it's hard to really sometimes look back and go, really give yourself credit for the shifts that you've done. I have found anyway, so sometimes I have to remind myself. And one really great thing was from people I've heard locally had said, the one thing they said was, "Well, you were very courageous," so that felt good. But the other thing that I mentioned to you that shocked me too, when I was just sending the manuscript around, a number of women I know who I would consider, progressive feminists, they had traveled alone in India too. And because they hadn't had the same experiences I had in terms of assaults, they seemed to imply that it must have been something I did. And I was really shocked. I thought, wow, if that's coming from educated allies, what would even a mentor I had made a comment similar to that. So I was shocked. I thought, wow, if this is what the allies are saying, what are the others people going to say? So our patriarchal values are way, way more entrenched, and blame the victim is way more entrenched than what I thought it was. So, yeah, that was really a shock to me.
I bet it was a shock. And, and I'm going to touch on how you help other people write their stories, but before that, can we just touch a little bit on the forgiveness of your mother?
Yeah.
Because there was a part that both parents play.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned in the book at two different times when I tried to talk to my mom about this, and it was very clear she didn't want to go there, and that didn't surprise me at all because she was always very concerned about image and maintaining appearances, even at the most, minute level. So I knew she wasn't going to go out on a limb for me, that's for sure. So,
Yeah.
um anyway, but as it progressed and she ended up getting Alzheimer's, and so I started to end up having more compassion for her. And even at one point we did soul collage, we made soul collage cards together, and that really meant a lot to me. And I just had to accept and let go that she did not have the emotional capacity or the willingness or whatever to deal with it. Because I actually try when I brought up to my family. I made a choice to not go on a family trip because of my dad's alcoholism, and I said that, and my mom wrote me back this letter saying, "You will not endear yourself to the family by pointing out someone's shortcomings," and stuff like that. So, anyway, so I knew
Yeah.
I had to just let go of that, ideal vision and just accept again from with compassion, acceptance. She is
Yeah.
who she is. She's a product of her upbringing and environment, and that's it. So,
And that shows your growth. That shows your healing,
but
your
I mean,
compassion, your
I
love.
I did have anger for her for many years and on a lot of issues, and I made soul collage cards for her, and you can see the transition from like the very first one I made, which was true to my views at the time. I had a lot of anger towards her, and that's what the card represents. And then as I shifted and made new cards, they're very different now, and I actually now feel a lot more gratitude for things that because I mean, I'm a writer, I think, because of the stories my mom read to me as a child. And a lot of these things I took for granted at the time, now as an adult, I can look back and feel grateful for.
Oh, oh, that's huge healing. Huge. And you have some of those cards in your book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I don't have them in the book. I would have loved to, but there's one on my website. Oh,
Yeah.
in the section about my book where I show the card that's I made that's basically saying to my dad, "I know what you did," and
Yeah.
here it is. So, yeah, people can look at that.
That's where I saw that. You have a video of that, which I think is really
Yeah,
good.
there's some
Can you
cards
talk
in the video. Yeah.
well, and you talk about the pictures on the front of your book, how you have your dad, I think he was at 3, 5?
Yeah,
How
that's
yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, and just being able to do that is
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, yeah, throughout the book, I do include descriptions of photographs, different family photographs. So yeah, that's one of the ones was as my dad when he was about five himself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I love how you reference that to help bring in that compassion, but again, I wanna say to our listeners, let's do our own work first. Let's understand ourselves first before we even get to the forgiveness or bringing it up with others because we need the safety for ourselves
hmm
first. And
yeah,
now I'd love to touch on you help other writers tell their stories.
yeah.
And
Well,
how do you help people do that, especially with their own trauma or healing?
Well, I used to do group classes now. I mean, before, and now I'm mostly retired, but I still do some one-on-one work
Okay.
as a writing coach with people who are working on memoirs. And I've worked with people, guys who were Afghan war survivors. I'm working with a number of different women right now. And I have to be careful because it can end up having an accumulative effect too when you're reading traumatic stuff. And one of the challenges is sometimes I can think that someone's further along in their growth process than they are. So when I make a comment or suggestion, I have to be really careful about how, because there's a tendency that I want to try to push them to try to do more, but someone has to be ready for that. So it's trying to find that balance between honoring them and healing, but at the same time, not wanting them to stay stuck because it's a challenge. But anyway, it's been very rewarding, but it can take its toll too. I took a break from that, and I actually had a dream about the teaching writing that basically I felt was telling me, look, it's time to focus on your own writing, and that's why I stopped the last group teaching that I was doing mostly because of a dream that I had. That was one of the reasons.
Wow, I love how you get information through your dreams. Yeah. And what would you say, like, to somebody who has been thinking about writing their story? What do they need to know about themselves? Or is there anything you can provide to them to know that they're ready to write a story?
Well, I mean, the one thing that I think is a lot of people they need to honor their own process because what I find is a lot of people read about what some famous writer has done. Like they'll write 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day or 5 hours a day. And so they will mold themselves around what they've read some other writer does, and that might not be what works for them. So just honoring what, and I always just recommend keeping a notebook and just jotting stuff down. And even like waking up in the middle of the night, you might want to write stuff down and do those like timed writing exercises. They can be very powerful, and keep it all in one place. Like if you have it in a book as opposed to loose piece of paper, it's like you're telling your subconscious that you're taking this seriously. There's no one way of starting a book. It really is about surrender and letting go and honoring your own process. And you need to do a lot of drafts. I mean, that's one common thing I see. People think they do 3 drafts and then that's it. And even the most famous writers like, Hemingway and F. Scott Fitzgerald often did like 16 drafts or something at least. I did a lot of drafts on my memoir, a huge amount. So
I bet. Is there anything that they should check in with themselves on mentally and emotionally before taking on a project like that?
well, I mean, you need to be in a good place, a healthy place, I would say in general, because it's a huge, even as a professional writer, taking on a book like this, it was challenging. I don't think people realize how much work writing is. So,
Yeah.
um, anyway, but just, yeah, honor and be careful who you show it to, anything that you've written to, too, because some comments from somebody can be devastating if you're in the early stage of it. So make sure it's someone who's very supportive and understanding.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. And I'd like to ask, what in your own forgiveness process, in your world, what has forgiveness given back to you that trauma has taken away?
Well, it's added such lightness to me. I feel like it's taken off this huge burden of, like, I used to get depressed for a long time and,
Mm.
really dealt with that a lot. I haven't been depressed. Like, I have so much more joy in my life now. It's amazing. Like, I just feel as if it opened the door to joy, and it allows me to try to aim to be less judgmental of people, like the compassion piece, which I feel is like goes hand in hand with forgiveness. I don't think you can have forgiveness if you don't have compassion. So it just lets me try to, my initial reaction might be judgment, but I can let go of that much more quickly and come from a place of compassion, trying to understand the other person, not just immediately
Mhm.
push them away, which is why we're tended to do, "Oh, well, I'm not like that." But see, no, the concept of interbeing and oneness that we talked about.
Well, yeah, and I really appreciate you saying that because I think sometimes people think compassion means softness, right? Without boundaries, and it's just letting bygones be bygones or whatever. But, I'm hearing you saying what I truly believe is compassion, true compassion includes truth and accountability and protection and clarity. I mean, it includes all of that and an understanding deeper that we are one.
Yeah, and plus coming from a place of true peace in your heart. I mean, that intention on its own has a huge impact. Like if you're coming with the intention of conflict, that automatically shifts everything. So coming from a place of peace is huge. So I feel like all those things go together. Like trying to seek greater understanding about someone else allows compassion and opens the door to forgiveness. And then that's coming from a place of inner peace and
Mm.
not us versus them and conflict.
Oh, that's beautifully said. Thank you. Thank you. And as we get closer to the end of our time, it's like we could keep talking forever. I felt that too earlier. You have an offer for our listeners about your book. And you wanted to offer a free copy for
Yes.
those that reached out to you through your website.
Yeah. 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 I'll send it to wherever someone lives. I'll do a signed copy for them and send it to them.
All right. So what is your website? I'll have it in the show notes too, but I want to say it out loud.
It's Heather Conn, CONN.com.
Oh, cool. And now for those of you to find your book, they can also find it in other places too, right?
Yeah, well, the audiobook version, which I'm reading that just came out, you can get that on Spotify and Audible and all the usual places. And then, yeah, my book is available at Barnes and Noble and Amazon and, all of the standard
And you
places.
can get it by Kindle too, correct?
Yeah, there's a e-version and a, yeah, soft cover version.
Oh, I love that. And is there any place that you would direct people to if they want more information from you? How do they contact you? And where do they get more information about Soul Collage?
Well, my email address is on my website, so they can contact me through that, or I do blog occasionally. They can join, and I can add them to my blog list. And Soul Collage, I do some workshops and have information about it on my site is Sunshine Coast Soulcollage.ca, or you can go on the main site that Sina Frost, who has since passed away, started at soulcollage.com. And there's two books that Sina did too that, you can look at.
Oh, great. Thank you. And we'll have all this information in the show notes for everyone. So, Heather, thank you. Thank you
Oh,
for
thank
bringing
you.
your heart and I'm going to say your courage and your wisdom to this conversation. And, to our listeners, I want to say this gently. Your healing belongs to you. Your timing belongs to you, and your story belongs to you. Whether forgiveness feels close or far away, complicated or really impossible right now, you are allowed to begin exactly where you are. So, Heather and I thank you for being here with us today. If this episode supported you, please share it with someone who may need this conversation. And until next time, take care. And Heather, many blessings to you.
Oh, thank you so much. That was great.
It was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did enjoy it, would you do me a favor and share this episode and then follow us on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss one episode of the Forgive Yourself podcast, where every Friday you will get tips, tools, and stories so that you can turn your pain into peace. Take care.